Okay, I'll be presenting from here because I'm not that tall and I don't have a loud voice. So I cannot speak and shout at the same time. Can you see the screen? I can. Okay. That has been a challenge for me for a while, my voice. Normally, in a conference like this, you write a paper and come and present it. I'm doing it the other way around. This presentation, this is the short version. It was a long one. I made the presentation almost 2 years ago. Now I'm turning it into a paper thanks to my friends here. But before then, I'd like to say that I'm very happy and honored to be in this college, in this historic college. This is my second time in this city, in Atlanta, but first time in the college, and thank you for inviting me. So, can we have the next? Okay. This is the Middle East that I'll be talking about. It's a map of the Middle East. You'll see Arabian Peninsula, today's Israel, Middle East, and Turkey. And Islam was born in Mecca. I think you see Mecca over there, almost in the middle. And okay, thank you. So Mecca is here, and from here, Islam expanded towards south and north, and to the east, and to the west, and to the east, and into Anatolia. Muslims came to Anatolia in the early days of Islam, but Anatolia, Asia Minor, became Muslim after the Turkish troops came in and captured the area. There was Byzantium at the time, and the first Turkish troops came around in the 11th century, just before the Crusades. Okay, this is Turkey. Turkey is a cradle of civilizations. And we say that because we are proud of it. But there's another meaning to that. What do you think? That means many armies came in and invaded the area and changed the religion, culture, language, and everything. That is why it's a cradle of civilizations. And we have remnants of, some of them are in ruins, some of them are restored, but remnants of historic buildings, monuments, temples, theaters in today's Turkey. So what the newcomers did was they introduced, because it's now the dominant culture, they introduced their culture, language, and religion into Asia Minor. And after that, people started, of course, there were some persecutions and forced conversions, but it was not common. They normally wouldn't persecute people, but people would adopt the religion and culture of the dominant of the state or the forces that invaded the area in a long time. We see that from, if you check temples and churches in Turkey, there are still, some of them are still up and running. I'm not talking about temples, but churches. They are still up and running, most of them. And a couple of them were converted to mosques as soon as Muslims came. The rest of them were left to the congregations as long as they paid the special tax. Muslims did not touch them. And it was the same when Christianity came under the Roman Empire. Roman Empire adopted Christianity in the 4th century. And I'm going to go into detail if I have time. We will see conversions to churches, temples. They converted some temples to churches, but they didn't do it in the 4th century. you will see in the 6th century, so which is almost 2 centuries after Christianity was introduced into the region by the Roman Empire. So, but when you talk to local people, I'm talking about general public who received their education in public schools, which is normally has a nationalist rhetoric. They would normally believe certain narratives. And today in Turkey, when you talk to people, ask them what their origin was, they would say, I'm Turkish. And when you ask, where did you come from? They would say, we came from Central Asia. It's as if like Turks came from Central Asia, Greeks and Romans in Turkey, they left, which did not happen. They were there, they remained there, and Turks who came to the region were like maybe 10-15% of today's Turkey's population, not more than that. Because they were soldiers, they were coming to the area, capturing the area, which meant like invading the in today's democratic countries, invading the Congress or municipal buildings. That's it. They would do that, and to run the country, they needed tax. Why would they persecute local people or send them away when they didn't have any people and anybody to replace them with? So it was against their interests. I realized this is the connection to interfaith dialogue. I was a regular Turkish guy before I came here, but I'm a historian, so I knew this. I mean, I knew that Turks came later and local populations did not leave Turkey. They were Turkified and Islamicized. Yeah, late in centuries, but I did not realize it. I was still thinking that when I grew up in southwestern Turkey, and Turan Bey, he knows, he has been to my hometown. It is Denizli, which is like 1.5 hours to Ephesus, and 10 minutes to the antique city of Hierapolis. And the city is Laodicea, which is one of the 7 churches. So that's my hometown. So I grew up in a place where there were ruins, and those were our playgrounds. So I didn't realize it. I didn't realize that those were my ancestors. They were to us, and most of my, I'm sure they will acknowledge that, to Turkish people, those were other people, Romans, pagans, or Christians, who lived here, but they left when we came. But when I visited with the dialogue group, when I visited Ephesus, and then visited some museums over there, I've been to those places earlier. But this time it was different. I realized that those people looked like my people around the town, not like the Anglo-Saxon Americans that I took to Turkey. Because before then I was associating Romans with Christians. That meant to me white Europeans. But I realized, no, it's not. Those are Europeans. I am their descendants, the Romans' descendants. That's it was in 2006. It's too late. It was too late for me. I had been a historian for at least 10 years back then. So I should be ashamed of myself. But you realize these things when the time comes, right? So then I started working on how these people became Muslims. Was there a forced conversion or not? And when I started putting together this presentation, I realized that it was the same in the early times as well. Like, for instance, people, they lived there under the pagan Romans. And Roman Empire adopted Christianity, and since now it has become the dominant culture, I'm sorry, the dominant culture, they started adopting Christianity, and when their temples became obsolete, nobody was pagan anymore, they turned the temple, they either left it or they turned the temple into a church. And similarly, similar things happened when Muslims came in. As I said, it was not advantageous to Muslim rulers to get rid of non-Muslims because they had special tax on them because they were not fighting for the state, so Muslims would fight, they were not, so they would be protected, so they paid an extra tax for that protection, which is very much like an international student paying more tuition in the United States. And I give this example to my students. I tell them, how old are you? They would say 19, 20. Can you vote? They would say, yeah, you can. But I've been here for 15 years, and I paid more tax than you ever earned. But still, I cannot vote because I'm waiting for the citizenship. It's very much like that. I mean, the government was the Muslim government, and they would trust only Muslims. But it was back then easier to be the citizen, which is becoming Muslim, than becoming a citizen in modern world, which takes like 10, 15 years. Okay, so I think I have summarized the argument. That's what I would do first, and then, okay, can we go on? Okay, so as I said, there are narratives. Christianity came with the Romans. Some Muslims would believe, or some local people would believe that Christianity came there with the Romans, and people had to become Christians because they were forced to, which, as I said, doesn't seem like it's a true story. And same, likewise, Islam. Islam came with Muslims who captured the areas, yes, but that doesn't mean that Islam was disseminated in the area by sword. Yeah, they came and invaded the country, but saying that Islam was disseminated by sword implicates that the invaders, Muslim troops, gave them only two choices: become Muslim or die, which did not happen. So because of that implication, I would refrain from using the term that Islam was spread by sword. People looking up to the rulers and the dominant culture, they gradually became Muslims. Of course, this doesn't mean that there were no persecutions under the Romans, Christian Romans, or under Muslim empires. There were. But you cannot generalize it and show it as if all these people became Christians under the Romans or Muslims under Turkic empires by force. You cannot say that. You cannot generalize that. And you'll be able to see it when you check these historic monuments, temples, churches. You will see that because some of the temples, as I said, became churches almost 2 centuries after Christianity came. And now today, even today, you can find many churches up and running in Turkey. And in the 19th century, before the nationalist government took over, there were many churches, like, for instance, Akdamar Church, Armenian Church. It was the Armenian Patriarchate in southeastern Turkey. It was up and running until 1895, which means that these people survived. They were not forced into Islam. Okay. Okay, so do I have more time? 2 minutes? Okay, let me talk about the Umayyad Mosque, and I'll show the pictures of the others. Narratives of Islamization. I'm skipping Christianization because here at schools we teach Roman history and Christian history, and I don't have time. Islamization, narratives of Islamization has its first focus on the Holy Lands, and the Islamization of Temple Mount it's a term used to describe the view that Muslim authorities have historically sought to appropriate and Islamicize the Temple Mount in Jerusalem for exclusive Muslim use. But originally, it was a Jewish temple, but later on, it became a pagan temple, Roman pagan temple, and a Byzantine church. Then these religious buildings were demolished, and it became a garbage dump. And later, it became a Al-Aqsa mosque. So there is an Islamization, but it's not a forced conversion of Jewish or Christian temple into a Muslim temple. The Umayyad Mosque I think it is one of the unique, it has a unique story of conversion from a pagan site to a Christian basilica first, and then from a Christian basilica to a mosque. It's also known as the Great Mosque of Damascus. Damascus was the capital of the Aramean state, Aram Damascus, during the Iron Age, and these guys were following the cult of Hadad Rahman, which was the god of thunderstorms, and they erected a temple dedicated to him. When pagan Romans, captured the area, they combined it with Jupiter. So it's the same thing. So they made it a Roman temple, and when Romans adopted Christianity, they made it a cathedral. Muslims captured the area, Damascus, in 635, and the whole Syria in 637, the entire Syria. But this cathedral stayed as a cathedral until 706. So, which is almost a century, around 80 years. And when Muslims came, they only built a small area for Muslims to pray within the cathedral. They built a musalla, a prayer room for the Muslims, and it stayed like that for 80 years. When Al-Walid, Caliph, Umayyad Caliph, wanted to turn the cathedral into a mosque, because now there are more Muslims in the region than in the city than Muslims, Christians protested, and he had to give all the confiscated churches back to Christians to turn this into a mosque. But there is something here. All confiscated churches. That means some of the churches were confiscated. So there is some persecution. There is some forced conversion. But that doesn't mean that the entire Christian population were persecuted and their churches were converted into mosques, because we still have churches in Damascus even today. Okay. Can we show at least the pictures? These are, we can go quickly. These are temples and churches from Turkey, Asia Minor. It was my main topic, but I made the argument but couldn't tell you the story of these monuments. So these are temples that became, this became a church, for instance, a basilica. Armenian Akdamar Church. We can go faster. This is Basilica of St. John, Ephesus. Cave Church in Antioch, it is still there. Yorema cave churches, they are still there. Okay, can we stop here? This doesn't have such a story, but I just wanted to leave it there. It was in my original presentation because it's so beautiful. Okay. One more thing. And Hagia Sophia. So this is a conversion story. When Mehmet captured Istanbul, he turned Hagia Sophia into a mosque. But there was a reason. This church was the source of legitimacy for the Roman emperor. So he turned it into a church, but he left the other churches in Istanbul intact. Thank you.